Hi everyone, nice to be here with you all. It's exciting. So starting off, this is my graduate collection. So it's my most recent work. I think when you come to put your portfolio together, Emma and Kathy and Becky will go through it with you, but I think it's quite good to start strong and end strong. So I've got my tips at the end, so you'll be able to come back to them. I would always start strong, end strong. When people are flicking through, you want the first thing they see to really grab your attention, and then also you want the last thing to sort of leave a lasting memory. So that's one of my tips. So these boards are my sort of initial starting point and my colour boards. With this project, and Kathy will probably agree, I started off in a completely different point, and like I normally do, just sort of rushed it at the end and made it work. But I had initially looked at doing loads of digital designs, but they just didn't fit my style. So instead I went for this like really painterly, sort of hand-drawn element. I really wanted to focus on the female body and the female form. So I used lots of inks. I did mix a bit of digital work in there, but I mainly focused on the hand painted element. So I used dispersed dyes straight onto velvet. You'll see some pictures a little bit later on. So all of the images on or the colour swatches on my colour board are either just photocopies of pieces of work that I'd already created. They're just little offcuts I had here and there. What I would also recommend doing is sort of keeping everything, don't chuck things away. I created this board probably in about 10 minutes, but it's probably one of my favourite boards that I created just because it really tied in all of my colours. By clipping them together really simply, I think it made it feel more tactile. Sometimes when you're using a lot of digital work, it can be a bit flat. You've sort of got images on the board, but you want to, especially with textiles, you want to be able to sort of touch it and feel it. And I think it's really inviting to the viewer having that sort of layered effect. So should we move on to the next slide?
Yeah, thank you. I was going to say, it's a really beautiful concept board, that. Absolutely beautiful. And the colour board there, really lovely.
Thanks, Kathy.
I don't know if we said that at the time, but we're saying it now.
An ego boost. Yeah, so I've got my visualization board here as well, and I've just added in my colour board again, just so you could see how they sort of link together. Again, added swatches onto my visualizations. I think that's really nice to do, just so the viewer can really see what you're trying to get across. I worked with tracing paper and printing onto acetate here, so I just created some really quick line drawings and then underneath layered them with just some photocopies. So it's not really technical work, it's just a little bit of collage. But I think just adding in that layering was quite effective. Also, what I've done is just add some really simple text at the top. I didn't want the text to take away from the imagery, so I've just picked a really sort of simple font and just printed it really small, but just so if someone is flicking through and I'm maybe not there to explain, they have an idea of what I'm trying to get across on this board. So on the left-hand side, I've just added in some pictures of some sketchbooks. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about having sketchbooks in your portfolio. Obviously, you've probably all got your big A3 sketchbooks, and they're going to be really heavy if you're carrying them around. So what I would recommend is maybe getting a little light sketchbook that you can maybe put some samples in, or even having like a colour book, sort of just one that's going to be more manageable to take with you, that you could maybe just get a bulldog clip and clip on to some of your designs. People like having a flick through things, especially if you go to sort of a trade show, they might want to have a little look through a sketchbook. So that might be a nice idea for you to think about. And again, I've just got some of my initial illustrations. I think it's really important, and all of your tutors will have said to you time and time again that you need to have those sort of initial drawings. Drawings really important. Every job that I've gone for, they've asked to look at drawing. So
thank you, Charlotte. Thank you for saying that.
I listen as much as I should have. I had. So then I've just added in some images from my final show. I didn't actually get round to taking some great quality photos, but I've got these sort of snapshots that I've taken of my display. So all I'm going to do is what I would have done if I'd have added a board in is just printed those off, nice quality paper, maybe even on photo paper to make it look a bit more professional. Yeah, and mounted them on a board. I think it's quite nice to show the evolution from the initial starting point right through to the end if you are having a final. You
can really see, actually, you know, those lovely drawings, those lovely drawings of the body. You can really see that connection, can't you? Particularly in this one.
Yeah, I wanted them to I wanted some of them to be really obvious, but some of them to be a little bit more subtle. But yeah, we've definitely got the female form in there. Thanks to Catherine for helping me put them together the day before.
Remember it well.
Oh, thanks. You weren't here earlier, so we started without you.
Sorry.
It's all right, no worries.
So yeah, that was my display. Always try and get photographs at the end of a project. I worked quite closely with some of the photography department. There's some really great people that work behind the scenes there. So if you can sort of say to them, oh, would you mind photographing some of my work, and just crediting them, that's how I've sort of really managed to sort of grab attention, my work, and sort of grab those jobs, is through the good quality images that I've managed to get. So I think collaboration is really key, and you're at a really good position being at the college that you can, hopefully, I don't know what it's like depending your COVID at the moment at the uni, but in normal circumstances I would say that just collaborate with as many people as you can. Next slide.
Did Fiona help you put the actual the stools together, or you did that yourself, didn't you?
So Fiona helped me sort of work out the pattern, and how we're going to do that. She helped me with sort of sorting out the piping as well, and then I put them together. So I cut a piece of MDF and bought some foam, which was very expensive, and I think that I was really ripped off there, but so shop around. But yeah, also made the plinth. I'm quite proud that we made the plinth.
Actually, that beautiful, simple display was just so effective.
Yeah, I think it came out quite well. It worked quite well. Yeah, it was good. Nice space as well to.
Yes, we were lucky.
I think we had lots of like this, like like when we were trying to like configure that show. Yeah, I can remember we spent a lot of time of it, and although it looks simple, it definitely wasn't.
No. Well, I think also because the work was very strong, I think the work just allowed it to, I mean, it is very simple, but then obviously the boxes were made, they were beautifully kind of sanded, and nothing took away from those beautiful stools and your beautiful samples. So it allowed the work to kind of really shout out, didn't it, on those different levels, really.
I think that links quite nicely back to the portfolio work. I think some people focused on making their boards sort of as full as they could be. Sometimes I think, and I found it with my boards, if you just sort of strip it back, and they don't have to be really complex. Sometimes really simple designs are the best. So always, that's what I miss about being at uni, is like getting other people's opinions. So if you're a bit confused, go and ask 3 or 4 or 5 other people about what they think looks best, because ultimately everyone's gonna have a different opinion, but it is good to sort of use what you've got around you. I'm so jealous. I want to be back in the studio working.
Well, you can come back and do an MA anytime, Charlotte.
Oh, thanks. Sounds a bit stressful. Yeah, go on to the next slide. So the next sort of project that I looked at was the Bobby Tracy. So we went to the Contemporary Craft Festival. I'm not sure if you're still running the sort of things on that. Obviously,
we weren't able to last year.
Yeah, but yeah, this was a really nice project. So it is run like a live brief, and we're all set a task to create a sort of think about our target market that may attend Bobby Tracy Contemporary Craft Festival and create a piece of jewellery. So I focused on sort of contemporary sculpture. So I wanted to look at mixing materials. So we did some really great workshops down in the jewellery department. We looked at using resin and how to make our own sort of clasps and stuff. That was really interesting. So again, that collaboration between different departments is really important. So as you can see here on my sort of strip of, I don't know what to call them, shapes.
Yeah.
My blocks of wood. So I've got that resin sample in there as well. So I worked on adding sort of gold leaf to my resin, looked at different artists for inspiration. Ultimately made a collection of wearable art. I've still got the one that's on the board, and I
look at that.
Wear it into school next time and show off a little bit. But so I think I sold two of my necklaces at the craft festival. They were really well received, so it's really nice to actually be able to sell a piece of work that I'd created. It gave me a real sense of achievement that I'd gone out and I'd sort of spent the time making it, planning it, designing it, and then actually be able to sell it and seeing who it was going to was really nice as well. I think when you're selling online, sometimes you're a little bit far removed from who's receiving it, so it was really nice to have a conversation and talk them through my process. So one of the most important parts, I'd say, for this project was the obviously the planning and learning how to create a piece of jewelry, because it's very different to what I was used to. But I think learning how to create a good visualization was really important. So we had some Photoshop workshops with Norman, and he's a whiz, he's great. So he showed us exactly how to do it, how to sort of really finesse it and make it look really professional. So thinking about the shadows underneath and how you sort of change the opacity of the image to suit the image that you're working on. I also found, I don't know, it's probably not allowed because of copyright, but I found that Zara have some really good quality images if you ever want to pinch those. I'm not sure.
We'll just keep quiet about that.
But, so I found some images that, as you can see, I've tried to link the colours in. So those sort of pleather trousers, the reason why the visualization works so well is because I've linked the colours back in, and I've thought about how to try and make it a bit more cohesive. And again, with some of the other images, I've thought about which necklace is going to suit which, thinking about the overall colour, how are they going to contrast against the background, and there you go.
Okay, lovely.
Yeah.
Next slide.
Yes, please. So these two, again, with the Bobby Tracy, I've put that all onto one A2 sheet. So I've sort of created, instead of having loads, like 4 different boards like you're used to creating, I've just put that all onto one sheet and sort of mixed and matched my favourite parts of the project. I think it's just nicer so you don't have loads and loads of things to go through, and you just sort of get an overview of the project. This was a personal project that I worked on, so I was looking at the work of Paul Gauguin and his paintings from his trip to Tahiti. So I was really inspired by the colour palette initially, so I've made sure that I've shown strong links between the images that I've sourced my colour palette from, and then created my swatches. So these are all just painted swatches cut up and put on. So again, trying not to use too much digital imagery. Obviously, because I'm screen printing here, I didn't want to move it all digital. So actually painting out those swatches I thought was really nice. It's good practice as well to keep mixing colours. That's another tip. Keep mixing colours in real. Don't rely on digital all the time. So yeah, just added a few images. So these were just taken in the hallway. You'll recognise it down by the printers. Cleared the background, got on the floor and just took photos on my phone and just made sure I edited them after. Yeah, just a well lit space, nice clean background, not taken away from the product. So again, I worked with Fiona really closely to create this pattern. So this was just a chair that I'd got free off of Facebook Marketplace. Yeah.
But you didn't you? You sounded all of that, didn't you?
I did. Well, yeah, I did. I've still got. It's in my kitchen at the moment, actually.
Is it?
Yeah, there are areas where I was rushing right at the last minute that I would like to go over and to do again. But that was me running out of time. I did do a footstool as well, as you can see, sort of tied in. So I sanded all that back and added in I had to mix my own paint to paint the bottom half so it would link in with the piping on my chair. I created my own labels. So I think Kath, I can't remember. Catherine, did you help me print those labels? I can't remember. But maybe it was something I did on my own. I'll take credit for it. really, really simply, just I'm not very good at Photoshop. I'll hold my hands up. I didn't spend enough time practicing it when I was at uni. So that was just printed off of PowerPoint. I just found a nice font that I liked and printed it and sublimation printed and made my own label. I think it just made it stand out a little bit more and just made it a bit more personal to me.
I was going to say those colours, colour palette doesn't have to be massive. And it also, you can see every colour, it's all come from here. So, but you've really kind of edited it down, haven't you?
Yeah. And I think that was the thing. So many colours that I wanted to add in, but it was quite hard to do that. But I had to really sort of think about what I wanted the final output to be, how I saw myself, working with the colours in the print, and where I was going to use them. So I knew that I wanted that really vibrant sort of coral in there, but I didn't exactly know how I was going to add it in. And I think by having it as the contrast, the piping, I think it worked really well. And that's something that I carried on into my graduate collection as well, as you can see with the contrast piping there. So it's an element that I really liked to add into my designs.
Can I just point out there as well, Charlotte, to everyone, that on that footstool you did actually tuft as well, didn't you? So you did printing and then you tufted into it. Is that right?
I did, yes. That's a good point. So initially I did want to tuft more, but due to sort of like time constraints and just following my sampling, I decided that it wasn't going to be as successful as if I actually screen printed it. So again, I can't remember if this, I think this was second year work, wasn't it? It was second year. So we were still sort of experimenting with different processes. So I was trying to push myself. I knew that I wanted to try tufting. I hadn't really used it as much as I'd like to. So that's why I wanted to include it into this project. Forgot about that.
Thank you for that, Catherine. Okay, so
then moving on. So this was my jewels project. So again, I've started off with my initial starting point and my colour board. I think they work quite nicely together. So our theme was looking at the British seaside. So I didn't want to look traditionally at sort of, I don't know, sort of like when I think of the British seaside, I think of it almost being a little bit tacky. So I wanted to take it away from being tacky, and also working with jewels, I was thinking about their client base. I was thinking about how they sell themselves as a company. So I wanted to make it a little bit fun, a little bit playful. So I thought, what's fun and playful about the Great British Seaside? I decided to look at what should I look at? Sort of Victorian amusements, that sort of thing. I looked at, obviously in Plymouth, you've got the Lido. That's great. Where I'm from in Weston, we've got the Tropicana. So these sort of 60s, 70s sort of outdoor swimming areas. I looked at those for inspiration. I come from a seaside town as well, so I linked it back to my family. My nan used to be a competitive diver, so I wanted to include that into the project. When I actually pitched to Jules, I told them this, and about my nan diving, and she used to be into synchronized swimming, and they loved it. And I think that was one of the reasons why I was successful and sort of won. I think my designs were strong, but I also think they liked the backstory. So I think if you can ever make your project more personal to you and have sort of that selling point, that story, it's going to really strengthen your project and your pitch ultimately. So
all of this was all you painted all of this out, didn't you?
Yeah.
As gouache.
Yeah, so I used gouache and I used collage. I was a little bit hesitant to, again, I'm not very good at Photoshop, so I didn't really want to use it initially, but had a little bit of help from some of my friends, and they sat with me and sort of showed me how I could best use it. So I did have a collection of hand-painted collage, which I have included in, I think, the next slide, which I personally, think is stronger. Again, just painting out, mixing the colours, painting them out onto sort of A4 pieces of paper, and then I've got that A4 or A3 piece of paper that's painted. I can use it for my colour board, I can use it to strengthen my sketchbook, I can use it on other boards to sort of tie in my colour palette, I can actually use it for my ice creams. So I think, yeah, that's one of the things I'd say to you. If you're thinking about adding colour, always try and mix the colour and mix as much of it as you can, and create those colour swatches, because you don't know what you're going to use. You can use them for anything, really, like I've done here.
Well, you know what I'm going to just point out here is those lovely ways that you've just shown those colour ratios. Just so nice, isn't it? So playful, really.
Mm-hmm.
So, moving on.
I think what was quite nice as well is, and a few people chose to do it, actually adding in their branding at the top as well, adding the Jules logo. So I actually edited the logo so it was like a baby pink to fit in with my boards. It just makes the client sort of feel a bit more comfortable looking at your board, seeing their logo on there. I think that was quite a nice touch. I added in underneath my own text to say that it was a children's wear and homeware sort of project. I don't know if you can see it up there.
Yeah.
Children's homeware collection. So my intended output was sort of a teepee tent. I don't have an image of it on here, so I didn't put it on. But I actually made the product. I got some dowels and created like a really fun little teepee that I could have on the table next to my boards too. So yeah. Ooh.
So I'll carry on. Tell us how you did these then, Charlotte, because they absolutely loved these, didn't they? They weren't digital and flat, were they?
No, yeah, I think that was the real selling point for them. They'd seen a lot of digital work previous, and I think the fact that they could look at the piece of collage and it had layers and it was a bit more tactile, they really loved it. So these were initially going to be my colour swatches that I'd painted out onto my A3 pieces of paper, and then I just started to add on. Initially my ice creams went on there, and I thought it was an accident, it was a happy accident. So I had them all out on my table, and I started putting things on top of each other because I work messy, but it's a good thing ultimately, because I thought, wow, these work really well together. I just started painting, so I was just mixing up loads and loads of paint and then thinking, oh, actually I could add that. I was looking back at my inspiration images. I was thinking, oh yeah, I could add some little stars at the top, like that would be quite a nice contrast against the blue, not having to even add any paint in there. Yeah, I would say that Pinterest helped me out a hell of a lot for this project. So I was looking at different artists for inspiration, but then seeing how I could like translate them back into my own style, thinking about the composition of the page. So I, again, got all my divers there, trying to alternate between different skin tones and different poses was quite nice. Thinking about how it would be repeated if I was to turn it into a repeat. You wouldn't want it to be sort of top heavy in areas. Thinking about how I can as well, I remember trying to add in lots of different colour and finding that actually it was more successful if I'd stick to about 3 colours per piece of work. They obviously work well together, but I think it helps them as sort of standalone designs as well. So yeah, lots of collage for this. It took such a long time to cut everything out with a scalpel, but I think it was worth it. And I think these are really nice to have as well. I've got the digital pieces, so I've got my Bulldog clips with all of my digital work, but I think these are really nice to sort of have to pull out to show that I can do it by hand too. I don't just have to rely on my digital skills.
Okay.
Lovely. So I've got on the right hand side just how I've put together. So these are some of my, I think I don't know if they're fabric. Oh yeah, they're fabrics. They're top. Yeah. So these are my fabric samples. So I've got some A3 and some A4. Yep. So there's those there. I would have liked to have put them onto a range of different materials. I did focus on sort of using like a linen because it was all we had in stock, and I think I'd left it a little bit late. But if you can sort of look for other material options, I think that's always a winner too. That was one thing looking back now that I wish that I had done. So yeah.
Are these all sublimated, or did you send away for them digitally?
No, they're all sublimated. So yeah. But if I were to sort of carry the project on, would definitely have sent them off to and done them larger scale. Like I think it would have been really nice to blow them up again. Yeah, and then on the left hand side, this was one of the projects that we had to sort of push an existing project on. So this wasn't one that I created whilst I was completing my Jules project. It followed on after. So it was looking at how we can adapt a previous project and yeah, create something new. So I looked at, again, because I wanted to challenge myself and work with different materials, I decided to look at swimwear and how that would, although it looked nicely into my project because it's looking at seaside, it's the same sort of theme, thinking of a different output and sort of a different audience. So rather than looking at children, I'm thinking of women and children, I'm thinking of mums. So you can't really see here, but if you look closely at the middle image, it's sort of tailored, it's got little crocs there. So it's meant to be like a mother and daughter matching seaside outfits. That was my theme. So again, then I got my little swatches at the bottom. They're not big at all. They're really small, but it was just how the prints looked on a different material. So I was using sort of that lycra type fabric. I think that's just a nice little board to go alongside the collection too, just showing them that it doesn't have to be a homeware product. It can equally go on to sort of more kitsch clothing.
Lovely.
So then moving on from there, I've got my Made in Plymouth live brief. So we had a really exciting opportunity where we could work with Made in Plymouth to create a product to celebrate, I think, was it the 300th anniversary of the Mayflower? Yeah, it was. It's to celebrate that anniversary. I decided to look at Plymouth gin because I love cocktails, and I thought, why not? So I created a sort of a print or a tea towel design that involved cocktail recipes. So these are all watercolor illustrations that I developed in my sketchbook. Just scanned them in and obviously found lots of recipes. It was quite fun because I had a go at making some of them, so that was quite nice too. What I'd like to have done is maybe photograph the actual cocktails that I've made. I think that would be quite nice to add in there too. But yeah, so again, on the right hand side, I've got some images of some silk scarves. Catherine will have nightmares about these. We had a hell of a time matching them up on the heat press. But yeah, so that was the same as the previous project with the swimwear. It was pushing on an existing project. So my Made in Plymouth brief, I really enjoyed doing it. I loved my illustrations. And I was really interested to see how they could be translated into a fashion output. So I decided to look at silk scarves.
What's really interesting, Charlotte, is, I mean, the only thing that's changed on those 3 scarves are those lovely borders. It's really very, very simple, but really effective.
And it completely changes how the whole sort of piece looks when you're holding it up against the body. It picks out all those different colours that you don't notice between the yellow and the coral. You wouldn't have noticed those colours otherwise. So I think it's really nice to play with, how colour works together. That was something I was quite interested in. And another thing I will say, so if you think back to the jewels, they're made in Plymouth. One thing that Emma did sort of really instill is how your portfolio flows. So in terms of not just projects, you don't necessarily just want to put it all in the same order that you've created it. You want to think about how it flows, like how the colour flows, how your boards flow. So that's one thing I would say is I really took on board her advice. You can see that my colours flow sort of naturally between the jewels and the Plymouth gin. So if you can think about that, that's quite a good tip too. And so I've got my Society of Dyers and Colourists boards. So this was a live brief that we did with SDC. It was a really, really great opportunity. If you guys have an opportunity to take part, I would 100% recommend. So I won so Ella Duran came in and chose some of the most successful designs out of the cohort. We then went on to compete at the regional heat in, Becky, where was it? Stroud?
Stroud, it was Stroud.
Stroud. We went to Stroud College.
Yeah, it was miles away.
It was.
And I just had an automatic, which I'd never done before.
Yeah, no, I had to sit in the front and
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
that was a lovely day out, Charlotte.
It was a lovely day out.
It's burnt on my memory.
So again, we had these boards. We pitched it to the client, not the client, but we pitched it to a panel, I should say, of designers in the area. I'm still in contact with one of them. She used to work at Dulux, and she's really lovely, and she's just opened up a shop in Bristol. So I'm going to go up there when that opens up. But so I got through, won the regional heat. There was some really, really good competition there. So it was nice to see different colleges. It wasn't just PCA. They had Falmouth, obviously I think it was Taunton, Stroud, like all different designers there. So we had the opportunity to speak to them about their work. Obviously the theme was colour in nature. So we were all looking at sort of natural forms for inspiration. I think we won, was it 2 or 3 we won?
Yeah, well done. It gave us an immense amount of pleasure.
I think what I'm going to chip in really quickly there is that, Charlotte was so good at talking and explaining her project. And I think it wasn't just about really innovative textiles that Charlotte was, presenting, but you were really confident, Charlotte, and you really, you represented PCA superbly. And I think the panel was so impressed by your professionalism. And you really were a testament to being passionate about your product, being passionate about your, the whole concept that you were presenting. You really understood why you were doing it, and it really showed. And I think they were so impressed with your work. But yes, I agree with Kathy's comment before.
But I remember we did have little practices, didn't you? I mean, you didn't just go in and do that, you practiced.
I practiced. I practiced at home with Tash as well. She had enough of listening to me talk about my boards. But no, I think one of the important things about that was, like I said, about how I spoke to the judges. Being comfortable talking to people about your work is really important. Being able to sell yourself is really important. And also linking back to what I talked about at the beginning was having sort of a backstory. So some of these images, not on these ones I haven't taken, but there were photos of me when I was in Sri Lanka. So I was linking it back to the coral reefs there when we were using the plastic and trying to like help the environment. So that really helped strengthen my pitch. And going on into the national, when I had to again present my ideas to a second panel in York, they said although my project wasn't as strong as others, obviously because I didn't win the national title, they said that my story and the way that I presented it was fantastic. So yeah, I think that's a really good point, Becky, about the way that you're speaking about your work. I think what really helped me was when, Kathy will love to hear it, when we were doing the contextual presentations. Even now, when I'm standing up in front of a class, it's like I'm presenting a presentation in the lecture hall. So yeah, any opportunity that you can do to sort of talk about your work in like a crit, if you're doing a crit in the studio, or if you can present a PowerPoint that you created, then I'd seize those opportunities because they're really valuable in future. My tips that I thought I'd add in, because I thought that I might forget about them otherwise. So again, on the left-hand side, this image, this was a collection of images that I had taken by one of the lovely tech staff in the photography department. So she worked with me just in an afternoon. I think it was only about an hour we were in taking the photos. And what she's captured here, I would never have been able to take these photos. So I think it's just really important that you sort of, any opportunity you can grab to collaborate, just grab it, because it will help strengthen your projects. So yeah, I covered start strong, end strong, provide a variety. So what I like about my portfolio is that I've got a range of different projects, different outputs. It's not all interiors, it's not all fashion. So really have a range of sampling is great. Ultimately, when you come to show your portfolio to potential employers, they want to be surprised. They want to see something they're going to think, oh wow, that's different. You don't want to just have the same thing repeated throughout. So yeah, variety. So include drawings, include initial drawings, have sketchbooks with drawings in. As much drawing as you can add in is good. Think smart, not hard. I just like to add that in because just think smart. Don't chuck things away. If you can collage something out of something, like I did with my colour board, that was all just scraps that would have gone in the bin. So it's environmentally friendly too. So talking points, personal connections. So we talked about that, how I've brought in my own experiences into my project. So with my nan, with the diving, how those have linked into my designs, how I linked in with my STC project, my work in Sri Lanka. So I had a job interview yesterday, I just said to Kathy, and I've got my first teaching job. One of the main parts that the head teacher picked up on when he was looking at my application was the fact that I'd gone out to Sri Lanka and worked out there. It was what he started with. He'd been out there recently, so that was a really good talking point. So anything that you can add in to your CV or your portfolio that's going to make it a bit like a good talking point, personal thing, I think is great. Image quality, so collaborate, get photographers to take your photographs. Don't feel like you've got to do it all yourself. We're not photographers, we're textile designers. They wouldn't be able to design amazing fabrics or garments. So again, that's linking back to the think smart, not hard. So I put heavy, sturdy. This was in reference to your actual portfolio that you're using. Try not to get a really, really heavy portfolio. I have a black one that I bought myself before I started the course, and it is really heavy, and I just have nightmare thoughts thinking back to when we were walking around London and I had to carry it around with me on the tube. So be kind to yourself and get a nice lightweight portfolio. Again, I did choose that one because I had those 3D boards. I wanted something to be a bit more sturdy. So think about what you've got in your portfolio. If it's fabric based and they're going to be heavy fabrics that you've got in there, you might want a lighter alternative. And bulldog clips are your friend. So I found that it was just really helpful to join all of my examples together, clip my different projects together, so I could just whip one out if I needed to, and it was just really nice and easy to work with. Yeah, that was the end of my portfolio. Obviously, I've got a much larger portfolio, but that's sort of my condensed down portfolio that I would take with me now. But in a couple of years' time, I'm going to have more things to add to that. So I've got 2 portfolios. I've got one that's sort of my professional one, and I've got one that's not edited, that's just got everything in.
Oh, that was absolutely fantastic presentation.